The True Bride. In a remote village at the edge of a vast, ancient forest where few travelers ventured and old magic still lingered in the shadows between the trees, there lived a young woman named Lily who had known nothing but hardship, cruelty, and relentless exploitation from the moment her parents died when she was barely 7 years old. With no other family willing to take her in and no resources to support herself, Lily had been taken as an unpaid servant by a woman named Dame Gothel, a harsh, cold-hearted taskmaster who possessed strange powers that people whispered might be witchcraft but were too afraid to openly acknowledge or challenge. Dame Gothel's house stood alone at the forest's edge, a dark, imposing structure that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, surrounded by gardens that grew with unnatural abundance but felt somehow wrong, as if the very soil had been corrupted by its mistress's cruel nature. For 10 long years from age 7 to 17, Lily had worked like a slave for Dame Gothel, performing impossible tasks under threat of terrible punishment, enduring constant criticism and cruelty, receiving nothing in return but meager food, ragged clothes, and a cold corner of the kitchen where she slept on a thin mat that did nothing to protect her from the stone floor's chill. Dame Gothel seemed to take perverse pleasure in assigning tasks that were deliberately impossible, demanding that Lily sort a mountain of mixed seeds into separate piles by morning, that she spin straw into gold thread, that she empty a lake with a spoonful of holes, that she accomplish in hours what would take a dozen people weeks to complete. When Lily inevitably failed these impossible tasks, Dame Gothel would threaten to turn her into a stone statue like the dozens that stood in the garden. Former servants, perhaps, or maybe just victims of the witch's cruelty, frozen forever in expressions of terror and despair. But what Dame Gothel didn't know, what Lily barely understood herself, was that Lily possessed a gift that had protected her through all those terrible years. She had a pure, kind heart that generated a subtle magic of its own, and this innate goodness attracted help from unexpected sources. When faced with the impossible task of sorting seeds, field mice and sparrows would appear from nowhere to help her, their tiny paws and beaks working through the night to complete what she could never accomplish alone. When ordered to spin straw into gold, a strange little man would appear offering to help in exchange for small tokens. First her mother's old necklace, then her father's ring, then finally her promise of something she didn't yet have to give. When told to empty the lake, the fish themselves would drink the water and carry it away in their mouths to neighboring ponds, accomplishing the impossible through collective effort that Lily's kindness had somehow inspired. Each time Lily completed an impossible task through this magical assistance, Dame Gothel would grow more frustrated and suspicious, increasing the difficulty and cruelty of the next assignment, unable to understand how this simple servant girl kept succeeding where others had failed and been turned to stone. The witch didn't realize that Lily's success had nothing to do with cleverness or power in the conventional sense. It came from the kind of goodness that naturally attracts help, the sort of genuine compassion that creates alliances even among the smallest and seemingly least powerful creatures. The type of authentic kindness that generates its own form of magic far more powerful than anything Dame Gothel's dark arts could create. One day, when Lily was 17 and had endured a full decade of servitude under increasingly unbearable conditions, Dame Gothel called her into the sitting room with an expression that combined satisfaction and malicious anticipation in equal measure. "I've decided," the witch announced, her voice cold and sharp as winter wind, "that you've served me long enough. I'm releasing you from service, but not with nothing as you might fear. I'm actually going to give you what you've earned." She smiled, but it was a cruel smile that made Lily's stomach clench with dread and foreboding. Dame Gothel led Lily out to the garden and stopped before an ancient gnarled tree that stood at the very center of the property, its twisted branches reaching toward the sky like arthritic fingers clawing at the heavens. "In the hollow of this tree," Dame Gothel said, pointing to a dark opening in the trunk that Lily had never noticed before, "you'll find a chest containing 3 dresses. One as silver as the moon, one as golden as the sun, and one as brilliant as the stars themselves. These are magical garments of extraordinary value and power. They're yours to take as payment for your 10 years of service. But there's one condition. You must never, under any circumstances, try to claim credit for accomplishments that aren't truly your own. If you ever pretend to have done something that was actually accomplished by others, if you ever take credit for help you received instead of acknowledging the assistance, if you ever lie about your own capabilities and achievements, these dresses will vanish and you'll be cursed to wander alone forever, unable to form genuine connections with anyone. Do you accept these terms?" Lily agreed to the terms, barely able to believe that Dame Gothel was actually releasing her and providing such valuable parting gifts, though she was deeply suspicious about what catch or trick might be hidden in this unexpected generosity. She reached into the tree's hollow and pulled out the promised chest, opening it to reveal 3 dresses of such breathtaking beauty and obvious magical power that she gasped despite herself. The silver dress shimmered like moonlight on water, the golden dress glowed with warm radiance like captured sunshine, and the star dress sparkled with points of light that seemed to contain entire constellations woven into its fabric. "Go now," Dame Gothel said with dismissive finality, already turning away as if Lily had ceased to exist the moment their business was concluded. "You're free to seek whatever fortune awaits you. Just remember the condition: honesty about your accomplishments or lose everything and wander alone forever. I suspect you'll fail that test eventually, as most people do when tempted by the desire to seem more impressive than they actually are. But that's no longer my concern." Lily left Dame Gothel's house with her chest of magical dresses, walking away from a decade of suffering with a mixture of relief, freedom, and uncertainty about what would come next. She had no money beyond the value of the dresses themselves, no family to return to, no home waiting for her, no prospects or opportunities in a world that had shown her nothing but cruelty since her parents' death. But she had her freedom, her innate kindness, and 3 magical dresses that might open doors previously closed to an orphan servant girl with no resources or connections. Lily wandered for several weeks, doing odd jobs in villages, sleeping in barns and haystacks, carefully preserving the magical dresses while living in her worn servant's clothes, saving them for some important occasion she couldn't yet identify but felt certain would eventually arrive. During this time she heard stories about a neighboring kingdom where the young king had recently lost his beloved wife to a sudden illness, leaving him heartbroken and his young daughter motherless. The king, whose name was Alexander, was said to be kind and just, genuinely loved by his people, but so consumed by grief that he had withdrawn from public life, leaving the kingdom's governance to advisors while he mourned in isolation with his daughter Elena. King Alexander's advisors, concerned about the kingdom's stability and the need for a queen to help raise Princess Elena and eventually provide an heir, had convinced the grieving king to hold a series of 3 balls over 3 consecutive nights, inviting noblewomen from across the region in hopes that Alexander might find someone who could help him heal and move forward from his devastating loss. The balls were to be the grandest celebrations the kingdom had ever seen, with music and dancing and elaborate feasts, designed to lift the king from his depression and potentially introduce him to someone who might become his new queen. Lily heard about these balls and felt a strange pull in her heart, not simple ambition or social climbing, but a genuine sense that she was meant to attend, that something important awaited her there, that her suffering and her magical dresses and her journey had been leading to this moment. She made her way to the capital city and found work as a kitchen maid in the palace itself, scrubbing pots and floors just as she had for Dame Gothel, but now with a sense of purpose and anticipation rather than despair and hopelessness. On the evening of the first ball, after completing her kitchen duties and ensuring no one would notice her absence, Lily went to a secluded corner of the palace gardens and opened her chest. She took out the dress as silver as the moon, and the moment she put it on she was transformed, not just in appearance but in bearing and presence, as if the dress revealed something that had always been within her but had been hidden by years of servitude and suffering. She looked like a mysterious noblewoman of great importance, beautiful and graceful and commanding respect simply by existing. A magical carriage appeared, summoned by the dress's power, and Lily rode to the ball's grand entrance, entering the palace not through the servants' quarters but through the main doors like any noble guest. The ballroom was magnificent, filled with hundreds of elegantly dressed nobles, lit by thousands of candles in crystal chandeliers, alive with music from an orchestra of virtuoso musicians. But despite all this beauty and celebration, King Alexander sat on his throne looking distant and sad, going through the motions of greeting guests without any genuine engagement or interest, clearly present in body but absent in spirit, unable to shake the grief that had consumed him since his wife's death. Princess Elena, a sweet-faced girl of about 8 years old, sat beside her father looking almost as sad as he did, clearly missing her mother and sensing her father's withdrawal from life and from her. When Lily entered wearing the silver moonlight dress, something shifted in the atmosphere of the ballroom. People turned to look at this mysterious stranger, whispering among themselves about who she might be, admiring her beauty and grace and the otherworldly quality of her presence. But more importantly, King Alexander looked up from his grief-induced fog and truly saw someone for the first time since his wife's death. He rose from his throne and approached Lily, drawn by something he couldn't quite name, not just her physical beauty, but something in her eyes that spoke of suffering survived and kindness maintained despite hardship, something genuine and real in a room full of people performing and pretending. "May I have this dance?" Alexander asked, extending his hand with a courtesy and genuine interest he hadn't shown any other guest that evening. Lily accepted, and as they moved together across the polished ballroom floor, they began to talk in a way that went far beyond superficial pleasantries or flirtatious banter. Alexander found himself sharing his grief with this mysterious stranger, talking about his late wife and his struggle to be a good father to Elena while drowning in his own sorrow, admitting his fear that he would never feel whole or alive again. And Lily, without revealing her true identity or circumstances, shared her own experiences with loss and suffering, offering wisdom that came from genuine understanding rather than empty platitudes or performative sympathy. "Grief doesn't mean you're broken," Lily said gently as they danced, her voice carrying conviction born from personal experience. "It means you loved deeply and lost something precious. The pain is the price of having loved, and while it feels unbearable now, eventually you'll be able to hold both the grief and the joy of having loved simultaneously. You'll never stop missing her, but you can still build a life worth living, still be present for your daughter, still open your heart to new connections without betraying the love you had. That's not moving on from her. That's honoring her memory by refusing to let loss destroy you completely." Alexander felt something crack open in his frozen heart as this mysterious woman spoke truths he desperately needed to hear, truths no one else had been able to articulate in ways that reached him through his grief. He wanted to know more about her, wanted to understand who she was and where she'd come from, wanted to continue this conversation that was the first thing to feel real and meaningful since his world had shattered. But as midnight approached, Lily suddenly pulled away, making excuses about needing to leave, and before Alexander could stop her or even learn her name, she had disappeared from the ballroom, leaving behind only the memory of her presence and the feeling that something important had just happened. Lily returned to her secluded corner of the garden, removed the silver dress and returned it to the chest, and quickly changed back into her servant's clothes before hurrying to the kitchen where she spent the rest of the night scrubbing pots, as if she'd never left her duties at all. When the other servants gossiped the next morning about the mysterious silver lady who had captured the king's attention and then vanished, Lily listened quietly and said nothing, keeping her secret safe and honoring Dame Gothel's warning about taking credit for accomplishments that weren't entirely her own. After all, the dress had done much of the work, had transformed her appearance and summoned the carriage, and Lily understood the importance of acknowledging that assistance rather than pretending the magic came from herself alone. On the second night, Lily wore the golden dress that shone like captured sunshine, and again she appeared at the ball looking like someone of great importance and beauty. Again she danced with King Alexander and continued their deep, meaningful conversations, and again she disappeared at midnight before revealing her identity or allowing the connection to become too concrete or demanding. This time Alexander told her about his daughter Elena, about his fear that his grief was damaging her, about his uncertainty about how to be both father and mother to a child who deserved better than a parent lost in sorrow. And Lily, drawing on her own childhood experience of being orphaned and suffering, offered insights about what children need most, not perfection from their parents but presence, not someone who has all the answers, but someone who tries their best and admits when they're struggling, not the absence of sadness, but the demonstration that sadness doesn't have to destroy you completely. "Your daughter needs to see you grieve," Lily said gently, "because that teaches her that feeling deep emotions is normal and acceptable. But she also needs to see you continue living despite that grief, because that teaches her that pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. By being present with both your sorrow and your love for her, you're actually teaching her important lessons about resilience and emotional honesty that will serve her throughout her entire life." Again Alexander felt profoundly moved by this mysterious woman's wisdom and compassion. Again he wanted to know who she was and how he could see her outside the artificial context of a ball. And again she vanished at midnight, leaving him standing alone on the ballroom floor, feeling more alive and hopeful than he had in months but frustrated by her continued mystery and disappearances. On the third and final night, Lily wore the dress that sparkled with stars, the most magnificent of the 3 magical garments. And this time when she appeared at the ball, it was clear to everyone present that King Alexander had eyes for no one else, that whatever was happening between him and this mysterious stranger was significant and potentially life-changing. They danced for hours, talking with the intimacy and depth of people who had known each other for years rather than just 3 nights. And Alexander finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been building since their first meeting. "Please," he said, his voice raw with emotion and desperate hope, "please tell me who you are. Tell me how I can find you after tonight. Tell me anything that will allow me to see you again, to continue what we've started here. I know it's only been 3 nights, I know this seems impulsive or even desperate, but you've awakened something in me that I thought died with my wife. Not romantic love exactly, not yet, but the possibility of moving forward, the hope that life might still hold meaning and connection and joy. Please don't disappear again without giving me a way to find you." Lily was deeply torn, wanting to reveal herself but also aware of the vast gulf between their circumstances. He was a king, she was a servant. He lived in a palace, she slept in kitchen corners. He commanded armies and territories, she owned nothing but 3 magical dresses and the clothes on her back. What could possibly come of such an impossible connection? But she also felt something real and profound growing between them, something that went beyond the magic of the dresses or the artifice of the balls, something genuine and potentially transformative for both of them. Before Lily could respond, before she could decide whether to reveal herself or disappear as she had the previous nights, the ballroom doors burst open and Princess Elena ran in, tears streaming down her 8-year-old face, clearly distressed and looking for her father. Alexander immediately forgot everything else and rushed to his daughter, kneeling before her and asking what was wrong. Elena explained through tears that she'd had a terrible nightmare about losing him just as she'd lost her mother, and she'd woken in panic needing to see him and know he was still there. Lily watched this tender scene between father and daughter, saw Alexander's immediate prioritization of Elena's needs over his conversation with the mysterious lady in the star dress, saw his gentle reassurance and genuine love for his child despite his grief and depression, and she made her decision. She quietly slipped away while Alexander was focused on Elena, not disappearing entirely but simply stepping into a shadowed corner of the ballroom, removing the magical star dress and letting it vanish in a shimmer of light, revealing her simple servant's clothes underneath. When Alexander finally looked up after calming his daughter, the mysterious star lady was gone, but standing in the shadows was a servant girl he'd never particularly noticed before, someone who worked in the palace kitchens, completely unremarkable in her plain clothes and humble bearing. "Did you see where the lady in the star dress went?" Alexander asked Lily, not recognizing her without the magical transformation, seeing only a servant who might have witnessed the mysterious woman's departure. And Lily faced her crucial decision, the moment that would determine whether she kept the magical dresses or lost them forever according to Dame Gothel's condition. She could lie, could claim ignorance about the Star Lady's identity, could maintain the separation between her 2 identities and perhaps continue the mysterious romance without revealing the truth about her circumstances. Or she could be completely honest, could acknowledge that she herself was the mysterious lady, could take credit only for what was truly hers, her words, her wisdom, her genuine compassion, while also acknowledging what had come from external magic, her appearance, her access to the ball, the transformation that made her seem noble. Lily took a deep breath and spoke with quiet courage. "Your Majesty, I am the lady you've been dancing with all 3 nights. My name is Lily, and I'm a servant in your palace kitchen. The beautiful dresses were magical gifts given to me by my former mistress under specific conditions, and they allowed me to attend the balls looking like someone of importance rather than what I actually am. An orphaned former servant with no family, no status, and no resources beyond 3 magical garments that I was warned I would lose if I ever took credit for accomplishments that weren't truly my own. So I need to be completely honest with you. My appearance at the balls, my transformation into someone who seemed noble and important, that was magic, not reality. But the words I spoke to you, the understanding I shared about grief and parenting and moving forward from loss, those came from my own experience, my own suffering, my own hard-won wisdom about surviving hardship. I can claim credit for the authenticity of our conversations but not for the beauty or social status that got me through your palace doors in the first place." The ballroom fell completely silent as hundreds of nobles and courtiers processed this shocking revelation. The mysterious lady who had captured the king's attention was just a kitchen servant, someone they had likely walked past dozens of times without noticing, someone they would have dismissed as completely beneath their concern or consideration. Some nobles began to whisper and snicker, making cruel comments about the king being fooled by a servant pretending to be above her station, suggesting that Alexander should be embarrassed by this deception. But Alexander himself just stared at Lily with an expression that moved from shock to understanding to something that looked remarkably like respect and even deeper interest. "You could have lied," Alexander said slowly, approaching Lily with careful, deliberate steps. "You could have maintained the illusion, could have let me continue believing you were someone of noble birth, could have secured a position as queen through deception and false pretenses. Many people in your circumstances would have taken that opportunity without hesitation. But instead you told the truth even though it meant risking everything. My interest, your future, the magical dresses themselves. You chose honesty over opportunity, authenticity over advantage. That takes more courage and demonstrates more genuine nobility than any aristocratic bloodline could ever convey." Alexander turned to address the assembled nobles, his voice carrying royal authority but also genuine conviction. "For 3 nights I've been speaking with someone who understood grief and loss and the challenge of moving forward from devastating pain. Someone who offered wisdom that came from real experience rather than empty platitudes. Someone who helped me remember that I'm not just a grieving widower but also a father with a daughter who needs me present and engaged in life. I didn't know she was a servant. I only knew she was real, genuine, and possessed of remarkable insight and compassion. Learning that she's a kitchen maid doesn't change the value of what she shared with me or the authenticity of the connection we've developed. If anything, it makes her more impressive, not less. She survived hardship that would have destroyed many people, maintained kindness despite cruelty, and developed wisdom through suffering that she's willing to share to help others. Those qualities matter far more than aristocratic ancestry or social status." Princess Elena, still standing beside her father, looked at Lily with wide, curious eyes, and then she did something unexpected. She walked over to Lily and took her hand. "You helped my papa," she said simply, her child's wisdom cutting through all the complex adult concerns about status and propriety. "You made him smile again, made him talk about feelings instead of being sad and quiet all the time. I don't care if you're a servant or a princess or anything else. You helped him, and that means you helped me too. Thank you." Lily knelt down to Elena's level, tears streaming down her face now, and said softly, "Your father is a good man who loves you very much. He was just struggling with very big, very painful feelings that needed time and space to heal. I didn't fix him, he's doing the hard work of healing himself. I just reminded him of some things he already knew but had temporarily forgotten because grief makes everything harder to see clearly." Alexander gently pulled both Lily and Elena to their feet, and with his daughter's hand in one of his and Lily's hand in the other, he made an announcement that shocked every noble in the ballroom. "I want you to stay," he said to Lily, his voice quiet but certain. "Not as a servant, not even necessarily as a romantic interest, at least not immediately. I want you to stay as, I don't know exactly what to call it. Friend? An advisor? Someone who speaks truth and offers genuine wisdom? Someone who Elena and I can talk to honestly about the grief we're both still processing? I'm not proposing marriage after 3 nights of dancing. That would be impulsive and unfair to all of us. But I am proposing that you remain in the palace, not scrubbing pots in the kitchen but actually present in our lives, helping us navigate this difficult time, being the authentic, honest person you've proven yourself to be." Lily accepted this unexpected offer, and she remained in the palace not as a servant but as what might best be described as a companion to the royal family. Someone who Elena could talk to about missing her mother, someone Alexander could discuss his grief and fears with openly, someone who brought authenticity and hard-won wisdom into a palace full of people who often valued appearance over substance and status over character. The magical dresses, because Lily had honored the condition of honesty about their role in her transformation, remained with her, sometimes providing confidence or beauty when she needed them but never becoming a crutch or deception. Over many months, as Alexander continued his healing journey and Elena adjusted to life without her mother, a genuine love grew between Alexander and Lily, not the instant magical attraction of fairy tales but the slow, steady, tested love that comes from really knowing someone, from seeing them at their worst and their best, from building trust through consistent honesty and mutual support. Lily learned to navigate palace life while remaining true to herself, refusing to pretend to be something she wasn't, acknowledging her humble origins while also claiming her rightful place as someone with valuable wisdom and genuine character. Alexander learned that love could return after devastating loss without betraying the memory of what came before, that opening your heart again was an act of courage rather than disloyalty. Eventually, when the time felt right for everyone involved, Alexander asked Lily to marry him. Not because she was the mysterious lady in the magical dresses, not because she fit some image of what a queen should be, but because she was Lily. Honest, wise, kind, real, someone who had survived terrible hardship without losing her essential goodness. Someone who helped him and Elena navigate grief without pretending it didn't exist. Someone who brought authenticity into a world often dominated by performance and pretense. And Lily said yes, not because he was a king who could rescue her from poverty, but because he was Alexander. A good man who loved his daughter, who faced his grief honestly, who valued truth over appearance, who saw her worth even when she was just a kitchen servant in plain clothes. Their wedding was a celebration not just of romantic love but of the triumph of authenticity over pretense, of character over status, of honest connection over magical transformation. Lily wore the star dress for the ceremony, but she made sure everyone knew it was a magical garment rather than claiming its beauty as her own, honoring the condition that had allowed her to keep it. And after the wedding, she had the dress preserved in the palace treasury not as a symbol of beauty or transformation but as a reminder of an important truth. That honesty about who you are and what help you've received is more valuable than any deception or false credit. That acknowledging both your strengths and the assistance you've received demonstrates true wisdom, and that the most powerful magic isn't transformation or illusion but the simple courage to be authentically yourself even when pretending would be easier and more profitable. Years later, when Lily was queen and Elena was grown, they would tell the story to young people who came to the palace seeking advice or guidance. The true bride, Lily would say, her hand in Alexander's and her eyes holding the wisdom of someone who had survived suffering and chosen grace, isn't the one who seems most impressive or who can create the best illusion of perfection. The true bride is the one who has the courage to be completely honest about who she is, what she's survived, and what help she's received along the way. Magical dresses can make you look beautiful, but only authentic character can make you actually worthy of love. And the greatest gift you can give anyone, yourself or others, is the gift of truth. Acknowledging both your genuine strengths and the assistance that helped you develop them, claiming credit only for what's truly yours while generously recognizing the help that made your success possible. And in the palace treasury, the 3 magical dresses remained on display: silver moonlight, golden sunshine, and sparkling stars, not as symbols of transformation or escape from humble origins, but as reminders that honesty about magic, both literal and metaphorical, is what allows it to serve us well, that acknowledging help received doesn't diminish our accomplishments but actually makes them more meaningful, and that the most powerful magic in any kingdom is the magic of people having the courage to be authentically themselves even when pretense would be easier, safer, or more immediately profitable. For Lily had learned and lived the truth that being a true bride, or a true anything, requires not transformation into someone else but the courage to be fully, honestly, imperfectly yourself, acknowledging both your strengths and your limitations, claiming credit only for what's genuinely yours while generously recognizing the help that made your journey possible.